even though I'm a professional and this is my job, I am a student. I'm here to learn. I'm here to grow and to always work hard. Sometimes in dance, whether you're a student or whether you're a professional, you might not feel like your casting is reflecting your hard work, or maybe you feel like your teachers don't love your dancing. But if you work hard and you know that, you can take pride in yourself and your work and be proud of that, regardless of all of those outside factors.
I'm Caitlin, a former professional ballerina turned dance educator and career mentor, and this is the Brainy Ballerina podcast. I am here for the aspiring professional ballerina who wants to learn what it really takes to build a smart and sustainable career in the dance industry. I'm peeling back the curtain of the professional dance world with open and honest conversations about the realities of becoming a professional dancer. Come along to gain the knowledge and inspiration you need to succeed in a dance career on your terms. Hello and welcome to the Brainy Ballerina podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin Sloan, and I am joined today by Michaela King. Michaela is a professional dancer with Madison Ballet. She has also danced with Pittsburgh Ballet and Suzanne Farrell Ballet. I've been so lucky to get to know Michaela on a personal level since moving to Madison, and I am so thrilled to learn more about her dance career today. Michaela, let's start from the beginning. Will you tell me, why did you take your very first dance class?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me on here today, Caitlin. I'm really excited to get to be here on this podcast. So I started dancing when I was about 4 or 5 years old. My mom put me in a ballet class because she thought it would be a good activity to do, something for me to be active and kind of run around and get my energy out. And she never thought that it would stick. Every year she would ask me, do you want to enroll again? Do you want to keep dancing? And I just fell in love with dance.
What was your training like growing up?
So when I first started dance, I would take these like combo classes, which were like a half hour of ballet, half hour of tap, half hour of jazz. And I kind of did a mix of different styles. And then it wasn't until I was about 10 years old, I transitioned to a new dance studio and all they did was ballet. So I was a little bit unsure how I would feel diving into that and kind of putting tap and jazz and those other styles of dance on the back burner. But once I started at the studio, that's when I really fell in love with ballet. I could tell that my teacher, she just took on this very different approach, like really instilling discipline and technique and the terminology. And I feel like I hadn't taken dance classes at that serious level. I mean, I think when I was younger, I always worked hard and I had fun and loved performing and being on stage. But this was the first time it felt very serious, like I was really training for something. Probably about 2 to 3 years later, I went on point when I was around 13. And that's when I started going to summer programs. So, like many dancers, I would audition every summer, and I went up to Chautauqua and Suzanne Farrell Ballet and Carolina Ballet, and every summer I would spend those weeks training and then return back to my home studio. Looking back, I think that was the right path for me, but at the time I was always begging my mom to let me train year round at a big ballet program like the Rock School or Pennsylvania Ballet or something like that. And she was like, no, I think it's important for you to be at home and, finish school. And you're at this very nurturing, loving studio, which I was. Now looking back, that was the path I needed to be on. But at the time, I felt like I was missing out on being with a big school.
Yeah, it's so hard at the time. You end up going to Pittsburgh's grad program, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you go there after you graduated high school?
I did. So
Okay.
after I graduated high school, I was like, finally, yes, I'm allowed to audition and leave home and go train somewhere. So I auditioned for a couple different places and I was offered a scholarship at Pittsburgh Ballet Theatre. So I went to their summer program and then I stayed on for their grad program. Even though it's called their grad program, there was no school involved, but it was just dance training all day. And I loved it. I started at 8 a.m. in the morning. With the school, I would dance till 3 p.m. And then we would sometimes have extended rehearsals until 6 p.m. with the company for things like Nutcracker, if we were in Snow and Flowers, or if we were needed to fill in the Corps de Ballet in a company production. So I was dancing all day long. Now I don't think I could go back to those hours because that's insane.
Well, you're pretty much doing that still.
I think it's just starting at 8 a.m. that
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't think I could do that again.
Yeah, that is really early.
But I felt so inspired getting to see this professional company, getting to peek into the rehearsals and sometimes be understudying one of them in the background. My class was very big. I think there were 40 or 50 of us. So it was a little bit intimidating to go from this home studio where my ballet teacher was like a second mom to me, and it was so nurturing and loving. And I had always felt very safe and supported to kind of diving in head first into this big school that did have amazing training, but it was a bit cutthroat and
Mm.
competitive. And for the first time, I was experiencing all of those things at once. So while I loved it and I felt like I was thriving, it was also like a wake up call. Like, is this what the ballet world really is? Do I want to get myself into this? Do I want a professional career? So it was I think a big time of growth for me, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you're 18 years old, right?
I was 18. It was my first time living on my own. I remember my first place. I was sharing a one bedroom with one of my friends, and our apartment was so tiny we had to have bunk beds. There wasn't even enough room for us to have two beds side by side. And, you're cooking on your own and doing your own laundry. And I had done all of those things at summer programs, but I did feel very independent being on my own in Pittsburgh. I remember I did not have a smartphone at the time, and I didn't have a car, so I had to navigate the public transportation system and take the bus alone. And I remember that feeling very scary because I'd go on Google Maps and find my route, and then I would just leave my house and I had to figure it out because I didn't have a smartphone.
Yeah, and those were the days too, like, you printed out your directions, and then if something was closed or, like, you couldn't go that way, you couldn't just, like, reroute.
Exactly. Like there'd be an announcement over the bus, like, there is a detour. And I'm like, oh no, I didn't print out those directions. Where do I get off?
I remember actually one time going to an audition in Detroit, and I was
Mhm.
going from, like, my parents' house in the suburbs, and I printed off my Google Map directions, and the exit was closed, and I was so lost. I missed the entire audition. I ended up, like, at a Starbucks in Detroit just calling my dad crying. Like, I don't know where I am, and he had to, like, direct me out of there, but I truly don't know how I got anywhere without my smartphone. Like, I can't navigate without it.
I know. I rely on it so much now, even to like drive around places that I sort of know how to get to. I
Yes,
still rely
yes.
on my maps.
Oh, yeah. So how are you coping with being so young and being on your own?
Honestly, I think I probably was not coping the best. Like now that I feel like I'm here in Madison and I'm much older and it's my second company, I've learned how important it is to fill your cup in ways other than just from dance and not make dance your whole world. And at the time when I was in Pittsburgh, those 2 years that I was in the grad program, ballet was my life. I mean, I woke up and that was the first thing I thought about, and I danced all day. And I feel like every choice I made, from what I was eating to how I should cross train and even who my friends were, it was all so connected to the dance circle. And I feel like I made every decision for dance, which I think it's important to be a hard worker. And if you want to achieve this goal of being a professional, you do have to make sacrifices. However, I think it's very important to have a balance. And I think I did not have that. And as a result, after 2 years in the grad program, I was offered an apprentice contract. And that was amazing. It did feel like a dream come true to have that company contract in hand. And PBT is a part of a union. So I had this amazing AGMA contract. And that felt wonderful to get a paycheck. And I had health benefits and a 401k. And often in dance companies, you don't have those things just because the company is small and they can't afford to offer that. However, I continued to keep ballet as like my whole identity and my whole life. And then I started getting some injuries. I think I was a little bit overworked and I started to get all these stress fractures in my feet. So I feel like I was always at physical therapy and I had to sit out of some shows. And as a result, I feel like that made me very sad and depressed because I was like, who am I without dance? And it was so hard to sit on the sidelines. And even now, when things like that happen, of course, it's a bummer to have an injury, but I'm still a person. I'm still Michaela. I have things that fulfill me and make me happy. And life goes on. I'm not going to fall into a deep depression if I have to sit out of class or not participate in a rehearsal. So that was very hard. And I feel like I was still so young. I didn't have friends outside of dance. So it was very hard for me to. I wish I had a mentor or people who could have helped guide me a little bit more through that process. And another thing I was struggling with is in the grad program, I felt like all the teachers were very supportive and encouraging and would push you. But in the company, the artistic director holds your career in their hands. And now they have new leadership, and I think the company has changed a lot. But at the time, this director, he liked a very particular look, very petite, tiny dancers, blonde dancers, and I just didn't fit that look. And I knew I was hired for a reason. However, my 2 years as an apprentice, I did feel like it was this struggle. I felt like I was fighting my body and not feeling good about myself because I felt like I didn't fit into this box of what this director wanted. They cast everything, you're trying to do everything to please them. So I felt like I was putting all of my self worth into just trying to please this director and be the perfect dancer so that he would cast me and everything and move me up through the ranks. And that just was not the case.
What prompted you to move from Pittsburgh to Madison?
When I was in the company for 2 years, there was a part of me that was so happy because it was my first company contract. I got to dance all of these amazing ballets. At the time, PBT was very classical. So I was in Swan Lake, Bayadere, Cinderella, Peter Pan. I mean, I got to dance all these incredible classical full-length ballets. I had this amazing AGMA contract. However, there was a part of me that realized if I stayed there, I was just going to be in the corps de ballet, which can be super fulfilling, but I wanted more. And I was also only going to be dancing very classical rep. And I was very interested in getting to learn and try out some neoclassical works and contemporary.
Does the mere thought of audition season make your palms start to sweat? Do you feel completely overwhelmed with getting everything together on top of your regular dancing schedule? I've been there, and I totally get it. As dancers, we spend hundreds of hours honing our technique and artistry. But when it comes to figuring out how to put together a resume or what to expect in a professional audition, we're often left to figure it out ourselves. That's why I put together the Ultimate Audition Guide. This is your one-stop shop for everything you need to tackle professional company auditions with ease. No more spending hours Googling and trying to piece together a somewhat coherent audition package. With this guide, you'll be ready to conquer audition season like a true professional. We're talking resumes, headshots, dance photos, dance reels, plus info on how to find auditions, what to wear, what to expect, how to budget, mindset tips, you name it, it is in this guide. You are ready for this moment. Head to the show notes, grab your copy of the Ultimate Audition Guide, and empower yourself with the knowledge to approach audition season like a true professional.
However, the decision to leave was not made by me. My director met with me and he said my body was not right. I felt like that just kind of confirmed the struggle I had been feeling after 2 years. Like, no matter what I did, I just wasn't going to fit into this mold. I was struggling with a lot of injuries. I felt like I was struggling to take care of myself. Overall, I felt like I wasn't my best version of myself there, even though that's what I wanted so bad. So when I heard that, I was devastated. It was so hard to hear that and to know that I had to leave. And you feel a little bit out of control as a dancer. You don't really get to pick where you want to go. So I did auditions. In the perfect world, I would have been like, oh, I want to dance here at this company. But that's not how it works. So I came to Madison Ballet. And after my audition, my old artistic director at the time offered me a contract. So I was very elated to know that I could continue to dance and had a new company to go to. I had never been out to the Midwest before, so I did cry when I knew I was moving here. But now I love Madison. I mean, this is my home and I love the people and the environment. But at the time, I didn't know what I was getting into. I was afraid it was just going to be all cornfields out here with no art scene, but that is not the case. So I moved out here and I have been with the company for quite some time now. I've had three artistic directors. So the person that originally hired me is no longer here, but I have been with the company as it has transitioned from different leadership. But overall, I am so much happier here now. It is a much better fit. And I feel like I am a whole person, a whole dancer in a much better place.
There's so many things that I want to talk about what you just said, but I want to start first with talking about working under three different artistic directors. So you've been with the company for almost 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. And now it is kind of crazy to think about in my career. I have worked for four artistic directors, one in Pittsburgh and three here. And I think that is a little bit unusual. Not unusual in the sense that I know dancers will move around in companies, but I've only danced for two places and I've worked for
Mm-hmm.
four artistic directors. While that is a bit unusual, I have enjoyed getting to work with different people. And I feel like I have learned so much from each person. The artistic director who hired me, he was very Balanchine. So that was a little bit of a change coming from PBT, where it was very, very classical. So he would do some neoclassical works, but he loved fast footwork and spotting front and turning from a big, long fourth position. And those were things I was not used to. So working for him, it pushed me to grow in those areas and challenge myself, trying these different little nuances and stylistic things. With my second artistic director, he stepped down and the board was looking for someone to fill in. And this woman stepped in. It was supposed to be temporary, but then COVID hit. So she ended up staying with the company a little longer than I think she had expected. But it was also great to work with her. I feel like she was completely different. It was my first time working for a female director, which I thought was very exciting. I had only worked for men before. So she just brought in a new perspective. I feel like she would focus a lot on footwork and point work. And I think that's nice to have as a female dancer, someone who can really help with the core work and who knows those little nuances of like when you're dancing with the core, where your arms need to be, where your port de bras needs to be, how to shape your feet in a point shoe. I would say she was definitely more classical. And then the board here, they finally found their full-time director to take over. So she stepped down, and my new boss is John Malik. And I think he is the best artistic director I have ever worked for, hands down. I feel like he's definitely trying to change the culture of ballet with making everything about dance just more progressive. In general, I feel like ballet can be very rooted or stuck in old traditions, whether it's the ballets and rep that you do or people's perspective on bodies and how you should look. So I feel like he's trying to shift all of that. And I love getting to be a part of that progressive change.
Yeah, that's really cool. I've really loved seeing the company evolve
Mm-hmm.
too, and having seen the shows over the past, I guess, like 3 years or so, and really seeing like what you're talking about, because I did see that more classical rep with the previous
Mm-hmm.
director, and now moving into having John Malik, it's definitely more contemporary, but you also are still holding on to that really strong classicism. Like Giselle was beautiful. I mean, you're still doing those
Mm-hmm.
things too. So it's just very cool to see how the company is evolving, but you're not losing what you had before either. It's all just growing.
Absolutely.
What was it like going from a bigger company and doing more full lengths and just having even like a ranked company to going to a smaller
Mhm.
company where you're doing more contemporary works? It is unranked.
Yes, it was a big change. When I joined PBT, I feel like I didn't have anything else to compare it to.
Hmm.
So I kind of thought every company operated that way and had these AGMA contracts and were ranked and did all these classical full length ballets. So when I made the switch to Madison Ballet, it was a huge pivot. And I think at first, before I joined, I was very scared and nervous that I was sort of giving up a part of myself as a dancer, that I was not going to be as worthy of a dancer because I wasn't doing Swan Lake anymore. And that's so silly. That's not the case. What I do every day looks a little bit different, but it doesn't mean I'm any less of a dancer. If anything, I feel like it's a lot harder to be in a small company. I think the biggest thing for me was when you're part of a corps de ballet, I think it's fulfilling to have that teamwork. You feel like you're part of like the greater good. You're not the star on the stage, but you're in the background, you're sweating, you're dancing, you're part of this beautiful picture, but you're sort of on the sidelines. And when I joined the smaller company, at the time there were less dancers. I think there were maybe 8 or 9 of us. And immediately I found myself dancing on stage in duets or alone or in trios. And I felt this pressure in a good way, like, oh, I'm carrying a ballet now. I'm not just in the background. Like, all eyes are on me. And that was very exciting. And I feel like once I got a taste of that, I wanted more. And at this point in my career, I do not desire to go back to being one of 32 women in the corps de ballet. I feel like I put my time in and did that, but that's no longer fulfilling to me. So
Mm-hmm.
I love that small companies offer so much dancing to all of their dancers in the company. I think that's something that's very overlooked, but it's so underrated. I think it's so fulfilling and really pushes you as an artist to grow into soloist and principal roles, which now I'm very lucky to be getting to do those. I also think it really pushed me to grow as an artist. I was no longer just focused on classical corps de ballet work, which is beautiful, but it's a lot of arabesques, a lot of standing on the side in B plus. And sometimes I felt like I wasn't really dancing. I felt like I had to tone myself down to fit in with the other women around me. And in a small company, even if it is a little bit more classical, I feel like you're given the space to show individuality. I think that's something too that Ja really embraces and encourages. Even if I am sharing a role with another dancer on stage, he'll encourage us to be different and bring ourselves and our who we are into the role. And I love that. I feel like I no longer have to try to look like anyone else, and I can really express my artistry and individuality on stage.
Yeah, you can see it. You can see it when you're watching the shows because everyone just looks so truly confident because
Hmm.
they are being given the space to dance as themselves. Like as a dancer, when you go to watch a show and you like feel like nervous because you know what's going to happen and you know this next step is a
Hmm.
hard step and you're like, "Oh, you feel nervous for them?" I never feel that watching Madison Ballet because everyone is just so sure of themselves. You're all such beautiful dancers, but you're also given the space to really be yourselves and to go on stage. I can go into the performance and just like relax and enjoy it and I'm not nervous and I just love that feeling. It's so cool.
I love that. That's so good to hear. I do feel that way when I'm dancing alongside all my colleagues. I feel like we all support each other and encourage each other. And I think that helps to take away that competitive feeling of ballet. I think it will always be there, but I feel like I don't have to try to look like or dance like my friend next to me, that I get to be Michaela. And I think that takes a lot of pressure off and then allows you to just be confident in what you're doing when you're performing.
Do you want to stop worrying about what's next after high school? You're not alone. Many dancers struggle with the decision of which path to take after high school. Should you attend college for dance? Should you strike out on your own in the real world of professional dance? How do you know which path is right for you? I've been there myself. That's why I teamed up with my colleague Gina McFadden of Dancer 360 to bring you the College Dance Decision. The College Dance Decision is a digital course that will help you take stock of what you really want after high school, develop a plan and a backup plan toward achieving your goals, and provide actionable advice to connect with your parents to bring your dreams to life. We've been in your shoes. And while we took completely different paths, we both came out on the other side with professional careers in ballet. Let us save you countless hours and dollars by providing you with the structure to make an informed, empowered decision about your future. Head to the link in my show notes and take action to cut through the fog of anxiety and confusion and finally get a plan for your dance future. What has been your favorite role to dance in your career?
This is going to sound so cliche, but Sugar Plum in Nutcracker. It was something that I had always dreamed of getting to dance. I think it's because Nutcracker is one of the first ballets you see as a child. And I remember seeing my local home studio putting on a performance of it, and I wasn't in it at the time, but just seeing it and wanting to be a part of it so badly. When you're young, you know, you're a soldier and you're a mouse and you move up through the ranks. And when I moved here to Madison, I had never danced Sugar Plum. A few years after joining the company, I was given the opportunity to, and it was just a dream come true. And I know some people get sick of the music. I love the music. When I hear the pas or the variation, oh, it's so beautiful. And I always told myself I could retire after I've danced it. So now that I've danced that role, I do feel like my career is complete. I hope to keep dancing for a few more years, but yeah,
Yeah.
that was my like dream role.
I love that. Do you have a role that has been the most challenging?
I would have to say Giselle. I got to dance the second act of Giselle this past season, and it was such an honor to be cast in the role and to get to dance the part. But it was so challenging. I feel like I have never been cast in a ballet like that before, aside from doing corps de ballet work, which I feel like is very different. What I thought was very challenging about this role was since we were starting with the second act, from the moment that Giselle stepped onto stage in her first entrance, you had to already be in character. You didn't have the
Mm.
whole first act to start to develop that. You had to step out and immediately be there so that the audience could feel it. You had to immediately be connecting with your partner. The port de bras is I found that to be very challenging. I don't think precise is the right word, but you can't just throw the arms away. You really had to think about what you were trying to say with your body, with your eyes, with each gesture. On top of that, it was a lot puffier dancing it than I expected with all the little jumps and petit allegro and footwork. So it was a very challenging rehearsal process, but it was also very rewarding and fulfilling to get to do it on stage. And when the time came to perform, I had one show and I was excited to get to just go out there and leave it all out on stage and not hold anything back since it was a one and done performance. So, in some ways, that kind of took some of the stress off. Like, I can just go out there and give it my all, and that's it.
Well, and you were gorgeous. I told you this, but I cried. It was so beautiful.
Thank
I loved
you.
it. I also want to talk about being in a musical. I read this in your bio when you sent it to me, and I didn't know you had done that. And I think that's so cool. So I'd love to hear about that experience.
Yes. So a few years ago, there was an opportunity to collaborate with a company here that puts on musicals, and they had reached out to Madison Ballet asking if they could use three of their dancers. The musical is On the Town, which I hadn't heard of before, but since performing it, I know a lot of ballet dancers have done roles in it. What an incredible, fun opportunity to be a part of. I had no idea what to expect. I do not consider myself a singer at all.
You had to sing?
I had to sing. We were very much in the background, and I was definitely brought in for my dancing, not the singing. But it was a great experience. The first day, I remember walking in. I did have two of my colleagues with me, so it was very nice to feel like I was not alone. The first thing I noticed was how welcoming all of the cast was. And I don't know if that's typical, but it definitely felt like a different culture outside of ballet. It felt like very, very positive. it just was a very different energy than I had typically experienced. I feel like usually on the first day of joining a ballet company or something like that, everyone's sizing each other up and it feels a bit competitive. But this was such a warm, welcoming environment, such high energy. And we would start by learning our lines and singing for part of the day. And then the second half of the day, we had dance rehearsals, and it was all very fast paced and a lot to take in, but at the same time, it was so fun and exciting. And I would say that performance was definitely a highlight in my career. I was singing and I was dancing, and I never thought I'd be doing something like that. And if the opportunity ever presented itself again, I would love to. I think I would need to take some singing lessons. At the time, we didn't really there wasn't enough time to prepare. We would practice in the studio, but if I knew I could be in a musical a few months down the road, I would definitely take some singing
Yeah.
classes.
I know that would totally take me out because I can't carry a tune. So I think that's very brave.
It was a different kind of challenge to be dancing on stage, but be singing at the same time, because I find when I'm just dancing, I do think about my breath and how I use it in my movements, but you're using it in a different way and you can't be too physically exhausted and then have nothing left to sing and give. So that was kind of an interesting balance of you didn't want to get too fatigued, but still keep high energy while moving to also be able to sing and be performing from up here.
Yeah. Were you also like rehearsing with the ballet at the same time?
I was not. Luckily, this was during a layoff, so it worked
Okay.
out perfectly with our schedule. I think the rehearsals occurred after our season had just wrapped up, so that was a nice transition of we finished, but we were still used to going in every day, still feeling pretty in
Hmm.
shape and on top of
Yeah.
everything, and then just started these rehearsals. And it was a short process. It was only maybe 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, so we put the whole production together
Wow.
very fast and then performed. But it was
So
so fun. I
cool.
loved it.
I also want to talk about college because I know you're pursuing your college degree at University of Wisconsin in political science. And I think that's really cool that you're taking this kind of unconventional path toward a college degree. And I'd love to hear about how you make this work because I think a lot of dancers feel like you either have to go to college out of high school or you don't go at all. And I'd love to hear about how you're making this all work.
Definitely. So when I was younger, after I graduated high school, at the time I was not interested in going to college at all. I had no interest in going to school. I just wanted to leave home and dance all day long. So at the time that was the right decision for me. I think things are changing, but I kind of felt like there was this stigma, like if you went to college and chose to dance there, then it was harder to get into a ballet company, which is not true at all, nor should it be like that. But I felt like I had heard things like that from teachers at the time. So I thought, if I want to be a professional, going to college is not an option. Once I moved to Madison, when the pandemic hit, I was laid off for 18 months. And I had always wanted to go to school when I moved to Madison. At that time, I felt like I had been dancing. I was interested in going to school. It just never quite felt like the right time. But during the pandemic, I was no longer dancing. I had all this time on my hands. So I thought it'd be the perfect opportunity to dive into school. So I enrolled full time at UW Madison. I think I did 2 semesters as a full time student. And that was a huge pivot, but I loved it. It was very different to go from dancing all day long and moving around to just sitting all day and doing homework. And at the time, it was all over Zoom. So I didn't quite get the experience of going in person and getting to be on the beautiful campus and have those in person lectures. So that was a little bit of a transition, but I loved it. I feel like with school, it's less subjective than dance, and what you put in is what you get out. And I really like that aspect of it. I love checklists and feeling like I'm accomplishing things. So with my homework, I find it very satisfying to do an assignment and turn it in and get feedback right away and just get to focus on something else. Even now, as I'm dancing, I feel like it's nice to get to turn off dance at the end of the day and kind of switch gears and use my brain in a whole nother way. Now that I am dancing, I am no longer going to school full time. I am just doing usually one class a semester, and then over the summer, I'll go full time. I am a senior, so I've made progress. I am maybe 18 credits away from graduating, but that's probably going to take a few more years going at this speed. It has been a lot to juggle at times, but I feel like now I've gotten into a rhythm of how to manage my time. And I feel like dancers are really good with juggling their time because before I was in school, I would teach most evenings. So instead of that, I've replaced teaching with my homework and my school classes. So usually I will structure my time where when I'm done dancing for the day, I'll come home and make dinner and then just spend an hour or two on school. And I find that if I do a little bit every day, then it's not so overwhelming where I have to put in all these hours on a Friday night or a Thursday night before a big rehearsal day. So I find that works the best. On the weekends, I'll do a little bit, but it's also important to have downtime too and really enjoy a rest day. So I feel like by doing a little bit every day during the week, then on the weekends, I don't have to stress as much and I can truly have some downtime and some rest time.
Yeah. So what do you like to do when you're not dancing?
Well, I have 3 cats. So I am a crazy cat lady. I honestly love being at home. I feel like I'm a homebody, being at home with my cats, watching a good show. I'm currently planning my wedding. I'm getting married next year. My fiance is not a dancer, so I do not see him at the studio. So at the end of a long day, I love just coming home and hanging out with him and making dinner together and catching up about our days. So honestly, just the simple things. I feel like those are my favorite hobbies, having a glass of wine on my balcony and catching up and having good conversation, something like that. For self-care, I do love baths. I probably
Mm.
take a bath once a week with all the bubbles, all the Epsom salts. I feel like it's so good for like your mind and body. So that's something I'll treat myself to when I have some downtime.
Yeah, definitely. What do you see yourself doing after your dance career? Do you have an idea of how you might transition when that time comes? Hopefully not, super soon, but at some point.
It is something I have thought about. I want my degree because I feel like it will open up doors for me. However, I'm not sure exactly what that will look like. There's a part of me that has interest in continuing to work for an arts organization, but in a different capacity, perhaps in like development or working with donors for a ballet company or something like that. There is another direction I could see myself going as well, where I could bring in my ballet background, and that would be as a massage therapist. There is this amazing massage therapist that works with the company, and I feel like doing something like that, working with athletes or working with dancers, would be amazing. And I feel like I could bring in my knowledge of the body and injuries I've had and the body work I've had done. So I think that could be another route. And perhaps I could do both and maybe massage would be a side thing. But that's sort of where my interests are right now.
Yeah, you have so many options. Before we wrap up, I would love for you to tell us if you could give aspiring professional dancers pursuing a career a piece of advice, what would you tell them?
Ooh, I love this question. I think my piece of advice, what I say to myself every day before I go to work is always check your ego at the door. And I tell myself I'm always a student. I'm always learning. Even though I'm a professional and this is my job, I am a student. I'm here to learn. I'm here to grow and to always work hard. Sometimes in dance, whether you're a student or whether you're a professional, you might not feel like your casting is reflecting your hard work, or maybe you feel like your teachers don't love your dancing. But if you work hard and you know that, you can take pride in yourself and your work and be proud of that, regardless of all of those outside factors. So, those are things I just try to tell myself as I approach my dancing.
That's really good. Thank you so much for this, Michaela. This has been really fun to learn some more things about you that I didn't know. And could you just tell us how we can find you on social media?
You can find me on Instagram at Michaela King 94.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Michaela. I loved this.
Yes, so great chatting with you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Brainy Ballerina podcast. If you found this episode insightful, entertaining, or maybe a bit of both, I would so appreciate you taking a moment to leave a rating and hit subscribe. By subscribing, you'll never miss an episode, and you'll join our community of dancers passionate about building a smart and sustainable career in the dance industry. Plus, your ratings help others discover the show too. I'll be back with a new episode next week. In the meantime, be sure to follow along on Instagram at The Brainy Ballerina for your daily dose of dance career guidance.